We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Gemara Meseches Yoma. This is Yoma Daf 5b. The Gemara had asked, where do we learn, according to the Man de Omar, that when it comes to the Miluim, Kol HaKosav Behen Ma'akev, everything that's written is Ma'akev? Where do we learn that from? So the Gemara had suggested that it comes from the word Kacha. So the Gemara now says, on the previous Amar, it said, Teinach, that makes sense. Kol Milsa Dechsiva B'Hayin Yona. Everything written in this particular section. But Milsa de Lo Ksiva B'Hayin Yona, but that which is not written in this particular section, Minolan, how do we know that those halachas are ma'akev? And Rashi over here explains, Milsa Dechsiva B'Hayin Yona, meaning, Beparshas Tzavod Miluim, Shenemar V'yatot Tzave. In Parshas Tzave, that's where we have the instructions for the Miluim. And the word Kacha is written over there in Parshas Tzave. So anything written over there, we understand as ma'akev. But the lo ksiv parshas miluim. But what about the stuff that's not written over there? For example, in the parshas miluim over there, it doesn't talk about putting into the choshen the urim v'tumim. Aval beparshas tzav es Aaron, but in parshas tzav, meaning not in parshas tzav, shenem rasham asiyas hamiluim, where it talks about the actual performance of the karbonos of the miluim. Ksiv vayiten olav es hachoshen vayiten al hachoshen es urim v'tumim. There it does say putting the urim v'tumim in the choshen. So in other words, there are some mitzvahs that are written in the Asiyas HaMiluim, in Parshas Tzav, that are not written in the instructions for the Miluim in Parshas Tzav. So how do you know those items are also ma'akev? V'im tomar afi b've'atot Tzav nemar v'nasat el choshen hamishpot es urim v'satumim. Now maybe you'll say it does say in Tzav the urim v'tumim, ain't in Parshas HaMiluim, but the problem is that's not talking about the instructions for the Miluim. Ela Asiyas HaBegodim, that's the section of that parsha talking about the making of the clothing. Uvahu and Yana lo ksiv kacha likuva. That's not where it says the word kacha. So in other words, the Gemara is asking, how do I know that something written by the Asiyas HaMiluim is also ma'akev if it's not written in Parshas Tetzaveh? So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Yolif Pesach. It's learned out of a Gezer Shava, Pesach. It says Pesach Oel Moed. That's what it says by Tetzaveh. It says that also by the Asiyah. And these words are darshaned as a Gezer Shava. Whatever is ma'akev, whatever it says in Tetzaveh, and whatever it says in Tzav as well, it's all going to be ma'akev. Rav Mesharshi says a different answer. Ushmartem es mishmeres Hashem. It says by the parsha of the Asiyah in Parshas Tzav. It says that you're going to guard these halachas, and ikuva, that is considered ma'akev. Rashi over here says, Rav Mesharshi Amar b'parshas Asiyas Anami ikuva ksiva. Even by the parsha of doing the miluim, it has a pasuk that means that it's ma'akev. Ushmartem mishmeres, when it says that you have to guard it, mashma tishmor kechol hakosav. That's mashma, you have to guard everything that's written here. V'lotzarch gezer shava. According to Mesharshi, you don't need a gezer shava because in the parsha of Asiyah itself, it has a pasuk that's ma'akev. Finally, Rav Ashi says, Kichein Tsuvesi Ikuva. Also similar, pasuk over there says, also talking about in the Asiyah of the Miluim, it says, Kichein Tsuvesi, as I commanded, so it's mashma, that it's ma'akev, so that's where we learn out, that again, everything written in that parsha as well is ma'akev. Gemara now continues, Tanur Rabban, we learned in a Brayso, Kichein Tsuvesi, Kasher Tzivisi, Kasher Tziva Hashem. All of these psukim are written in Parsha Shmini. It says, as I commanded, all of them are versions of as I commanded or as Hashem commanded. And the Gemara, the Brayso now explains, Kichein Tsuvesi ba'aninos yochlua. This is Moshe Rabbeinu. He's talking to Aaron and his children right after the death of Nadav and Avihu, and he's saying, the karbanos that you're bringing on this 8th day of the Miluim, even though you're an onain, even though a relative of yours or two relatives, Nadav and Avihu, just died, you should still eat the karbanos. Kasher tzivisi b'shas ma'isa, meaning as I commanded at the time of doing it. Amar lohem, that's what he says to them, and kasher tziva Hashem v'lo me'elai ani omer. So he's saying, as I commanded at the time of doing it, that's what you should do. You should eat this karbanos. And kasher tziva Hashem means it's coming from Hashem. It's not coming from me. And Rashi over here explains, Tanur Rabban kichein suvesi. I did not achal midrash kichein suvesi linyana de miluim. Since we just quoted the pasuk of kichein suvesi as far as the miluim de liikuva asa, which teaches us that these halachas are ma'akev. So kavala brais achal midrash kichein suvesi dishmini l'mayasa. So we decide we're going to have this brayso which talks about Kichein Suvesi in Parsha Shmini, what it's talking about. This is not the same Kichein Suvesi we just quoted by the Miluim. The Tzav es Aaron, because that was written in Parsha Tzav. Ela diyom hashmini dechsiv b'mincha kchues hamincha hanoseres meishay Hashem v'yichlu hamatzos etzel mizbech Kichein Suvesi. This is talking about in Parsha Shmini. It says again Kichein Suvesi by talking about the Korban Mincha over there. Kasher tzivisi gabe seir chatas asher darash Moshe v'hinei sorav ksiv achol tachlu asav b'makom kadosh kasher tzivisi. The next pasuk of kasher tzivisi is talking about the seir hachatas again that they brought on the 8th day of the Miluim. And kasher tziva Hashem gabe shok hatruma v'chazei atnuva ksiv tochlu b'makom tar kasher tziva Hashem. That's the pasuk that's by the shok hatruma and the chazei atnuva, also parts of korbanos that are brought on this 8th day. It says like Hashem commanded. Now with the Bryce is addressing is, why does it need to say as Hashem commanded or as I commanded? Every time Moshe Rabbeinu gives an instruction, it says some language of kichein suvesi. That doesn't make sense. There must be a reason why these 3 psukim are written. So the Gemara now says, or Rashi now explains, Onin in al Nadav v'Avihu v'kotchem asurim l'Onin. What's going on in this brisa is, in general, Nadav and Avihu died. The children of Aaron are in the state of Onin, and generally in Onin is not allowed to eat kotchem. Mikal v'chomer mimaiser akal d'chsiv gavi maiser lo achalti b'onim mimenu. That's learned out from Maiser Sheni. It says you can't eat it as an Onin. V'uamar lehen lechol hamincha huskak lomer kichein suvesi ba'anina sochlua. So that first pasuk that's talking about karban mincha is saying even though you're an Onin, you need to eat it. Then kasher tzivisi b'shas Maisa Amar Lahem. Kasher tzivisi, that's at the time of doing it, he said, meaning, Kishamatza Masha Asu Shesarfu Seir Hachatas. What that means is, they ended up burning the Seir Hachatas, V'hu Seir Shal Rosh Chodesh, meaning Aaron and his children, they did not eat from the carbon that was brought for Rosh Chodesh, instead they burned it. And B'shas Maisa, Moshe Rabbeinu said to them, one second, didn't I tell you should eat it? Amar Lahem, Hein Lo Huva Es Dama V'Gomer, Halo Lo Ira Bo Psol. Moshe Rabbeinu said, there's no psol over here. You should have eaten from this carbon as well, from this Seir Rosh Chodesh as well, because there's no psul. Kasher tzivo Hashem v'lo me'elai ani yomer hayu somchin al pi hadibor v'yachlu oso onenin v'lo tasu kasher asisam b'chatos. So he said, you relied before on what HaKadosh Baruch Hu said you ate, even though you were onin. You should do the same thing over here. Umoshe ta b'davar. And now Rashi explains that in fact Moshe made a mistake when it came to the Seir Shel Rosh Chodesh. Shelo nemar lo elu b'mincha uvechaz v'shok u'seir shmini u'v'seir nachshon shayu kadshei shah. The halacha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu to eat, even though they were onin, is only by karbonos that were brought at that time and not forever. Kadshei shah. Avol Seir Rosh Chodesh, but when it came to the Seir of Rosh Chodesh, Shu Kadshei Doros, that was a carbon that's brought every Rosh Chodesh. Lo Huter Lo Onin, that was not allowed for an onin, and that was not allowed for them as well. Ushlosha Seirim Karvu Bo Bayom, Rashi points out there were 3 different goat karbonos that were brought on that day. Velo Nisraf Elo Shel Rosh Chodesh Belvad. The only one that they burned was the one of Rosh Chodesh, which was the Doros one. Shenemar, like it says, V'yosa Nasan Lachem Lasesas Avon Ha'ida Zeh Shel Rosh Chodesh. Habal Tomas Mikdash V'Kadoshav Kemoshe Shaninu B'Meseches Shavuos. That's exactly what Darshan's over there, that particular carbon is talking about the Seir Shel Rosh Chodesh. So in any case, that's what the meaning is of all these various lines over here. Kichein Suvesi, Kasher Tzivisi, Kasher Tziva Hashem. This is all a discussion of Moshe Rabbeinu to Aaron and his children, telling them you should eat even though you're owning him. Then there's a question about the Seir Shel Rosh Chodesh. Moshe Rabbeinu says, why didn't you eat that as well? It's not possible. And again, the response to Moshe Rabbeinu in that case was, this is Kadshei Doros. This is not Kadshei Shah. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina says, Michnasayim ein ksuvin beparsha. It doesn't say anything about wearing the michnasayim, the pants, the trousers, in this particular parsha. Kishu Omer, so when it says, V'zeh adover asher ta'aseh lahem l'kadesh osam l'chahin, lohavi ha-michnasayim ve'asir so'efa. This pasuk of V'zeh adover, that comes to say that even the michnasayim and the asir so'efa are included in the miluim. Rashi over here explains, Einon ksuvin beparsha, meaning belevishas habegadim. When it comes to wearing the begadim, it doesn't say lo betzava v'lo ba'asiya. It doesn't instruct them to wear it, and you don't see that they're wearing it in the actual performance of the miluim. So kishu omer v'zeh hadavar asher ta'aseh lahem vav mosif alinyan rishon. So the vav of v'zeh is adding on to what we said before. Hamedaber betzavo asasiyas habegadim, meaning we're connecting the instructions for the miluim to the instructions of making the begadim for the Kohanim. There it does talk about wearing the michnasayim, and therefore we say when it comes to the milum as well, they wore the michnasayim. Also the asir sa'efa. In general, when Kohanim, the first carbon they bring is the asir sa'efa. This is true even by a Kohen who's not the Kohen Gadol. Like it says in Menachos. So in other words, this pasuk over here really learned out from the Vav. That pasuk, that Vav is saying saying that the Michnasayim and the Asir Sa'efa were also part of the Miluim. So the Gemara says, Bishlama Michnasayim, I understand the Michnasayim, Ksivi bin Yana de Begadim. That's written by, when it talks about the various Begadim of the Kohanim, it talks about Michnasayim. And again, the Vizeh, the Vav of the word Vizeh, that connects to that Parsha. And we say that Michnasayim applies by the Miluim as well. Elo Asir Sa'efa, but when it comes to the Asir Sa'efa Minolan, where do we see anything about Asir Sa'efa? So the Gemara answers, Asya Zezeh, that's a Gzeir Shav Zezeh. Again, it says Vizeh going into the instructions for the Miluim, and it says, Mi Vizeh Karban Arun Avanav Asher Yakivu Lashem Asir Sa'efa. It talks about that this is the carbon that Kohanim bring. The first carbon that Kohanim bring is the Asir Sa'efa, so therefore we make a Gzeir Shav, and we say the Asir Sa'efa applies by the Miluim as well. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Rabbi Yochanan says the name of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, Minayin Shaf Mikra Parsha Ma'akev. How do I know that even the reading of the Parsha is Ma'akev? And Rashi over here explains, Mikra means Parshas Miluim. When they did the actual Miluim, so they actually had to read the Parsha as well. Shenitztava b've'atot tetzava. The instructions were given in Tetzava. So Amar Lehem Letzibur be'esrim u'shlosha ba'adar. So at the beginning of the Shivas Yimei Miluim, on the 23rd of Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu actually read over that Parsha. When those days of the Miluim began. He gathered the congregation to the entrance of the Ol Moed. Like it says, those psukim are written by, again, in Parsha Sav, where they performed the Miluim, and they read over the Parsha from Tetzavis. So how do I know that this reading over of the Parsha is also Ma'akev? So the Gemara says, because the Pasuk says, Vayomer Moshe Eloida Zeh Hadavar Asher Tziva Hashem, this is the davar that Hashem commanded, meaning afilu dibor ma'akev, even the speaking, even the reading of the parsha is ma'akev. And the Gemara now continues, Ketzad Hilbishon, how did they get dressed in the various Kohanim? So the Gemara says, Ketzad Hilbishon, how did they get dressed? Have it. Whatever happened, happened. What do we care exactly what the order was? The question over here is, did Aaron do it first? Did his children do it first, etc.? So the Gemara says, Ketzad Malbishon Lasid Love. No, the question it really is, in the future, when Mashiach comes, what is the order that they're going to put on the clothing? So the Gemara said, in the future also, when Aaron comes, his children come, when Moshe comes together with him, then we'll find out the proper order. So the Gemara rather says, rather, our question really is, how did they put on the clothing? In other words, we want to explain the psukim. How do we explain the psukim? So for that, the Gemara says, Pligi ba b'nei Rabbi Chiya v'Rabbi Yochanan. On that, the children of Rabbi Chiya and Rabbi Yochanan had the following machlokas. Chad omar Aaron v'achar kach vonav. One said that Aaron put on the clothing first, and then his children put on the clothing. V'chad omar Aaron vonav b'vas achas. And the other one says they put on the clothing at the same time. And the Gemara explains, Amar Abaya says, B'chsones u'mitznefes, when it comes to the garments of the ksones and the mitznefes, kuliyamalo pligi di'aron v'yachar kach bonav. Everybody agrees Aaron went first, then his children. Why? Debein b'tzavo uvein b'asiyah, because whether you're looking at the instructions for the Miluim, or whether you're looking at the actual performance of the Miluim, Aaron Kadim, it always writes Aaron putting on the clothing first. Ki pligi ba'avneit. The whole machlokas is by the garment called the avneit, that's the belt. Manda Amar Aaron v'yachar kach bonav, tichsiv vayachor oso ba'avneit, v'adar ksiv vayachor osam avneit. The one who says that first Aaron put on the avneit and then his children, that's because the pasuk says vayachor oso, it says in singular referring to Aaron, and then it says vayachor osam, that they put on the avneit. So you see, that's the order. This is in the actual parsha by the Miluim. It says Aaron first. Uman damer Aaron uvana b'vas achas. Now the one who says that it was Aaron and his children did it at the same time, so there dechsiv v'chagarta osam. It says when it's talking about the instructions for the Miluim in Parshas Tetzaveh, it says you do it for them. Sounds like they're all together. So therefore, again, there's basically a contradiction in psukim. So one Amora says that you look at the psukim by the performance of the Miluim, and the other one says you look at the psukim by the instructions for the Miluim. And the Gemara continues, Ulamad damer Aaron uvana b'vas achas. Now, according to the one who says they did it all at the same time, Haksiv vayachor oso be'avneit, v'hadaksiv vayachor osam avneit. What does that man damar do with the psukim that we quoted again in the performance of the Miluim that seem to indicate first Aaron went and then his children? And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Vav Amud Aleph.